Hello and welcome to my kitchen, which is an odd place, you might think, for starting a camper van video, but there is a good reason for that, namely it is absolutely swelteringly hot outside and in the camper van, and I did not fancy recording this sitting in the cab, just gently turning into a melting mess before I set off. I thought, I have a little gap in my diary, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, why don't I book a little trip away in the camper van? So I did, and it has coincided with a heat wave, danger to life warnings all across Europe and the UK, record temperatures all set to be coming, and it's already hot enough today, it's going to be worse tomorrow. But I've booked it, so I'm going on it. So I'm going to sit in my little motorised oven and broil myself alive. Perhaps for your amusement, we shall find out. It really is very warm. Even in here, just in my kitchen, which is the coolest part of my house. And my house is terraced, so I've got another house on that side and that side, which shield me from the sun. And even so, it's 27 degrees Celsius in here. Outside in the garden shed, 37 degrees Celsius. In the van, with all the glass, I shudder to think, but I have just popped out there, and it's very, very hot indeed. As I say, it's going to get even hotter. The only possible hope I have is that the campsite I've booked is next to a river and they have an area where you can launch kayaks. I'm hoping to just go and splash around there, get a chair, sit in the water, cool my feet off with an umbrella over me as a parasol. So, let's brace myself, pack some cold food and see how it goes. With the van's air conditioning having packed up, the cab was already steaming hot from it sitting on my driveway in the direct sun all morning. So, with the windows down, not that it made much difference, I headed along the M50 westwards as if I were travelling to Wales. When the M50 ends, it becomes the A40, so I took that route and went a short way along it before turning right on the A49 in the direction of Hereford. But not for long, as I swiftly turned off again, with the campsite having its own sign on the junction. At this point you go along classic British country lanes for a few miles, hoping not to meet too much traffic coming in the other direction. Or you may come to a stop for a tractor which needs to turn into a field. But at this point I was mere yards from the campsite and, knowing there was a pub on the corner to the entrance, this was very easy to spot. I signed in with the site owners and they said to help myself to any available parking space. I have arrived and I have parked, and being midweek, my prayers have been answered. It is quite quiet here. Literally just after I parked, I got chatting to another camper and he said at weekends there'll be something like 600 people here. They all come down for the campsite and the river, and there's canoeing access, and it's absolutely busy as anything, which I would hate. But right now the campsite is practically deserted, and it meant that I got my choice of spots, including parking under a tree. Because I'm not as crazy as it might sound going camping in the heat wave, I have thought about what precautions I can take to alleviate the heat. And the first one was park under a tree, which I have managed to do. That direction is roughly west, so the sun will set behind that tree, which means it should keep me shaded from midday onwards, so the worst of the afternoon's heat will be in shade. And in fact I'm sufficiently under its branches, I think, that not a lot of the morning sun is going to see me either. So that's good. I have of course brought vast amounts of drinks, some of which are in the fridge, which is under there, keeping nice and cool. And also for interest, brought the old thermometer thing I used to have on the boat, which tells me it's currently 33 Celsius here inside the van, and in fact 30.7 Celsius just outside the van in the shade, so I'll keep an eye on that over the weekend. I have also armed myself with my fan from home, which I will plug into the inverter, and that blows a hell of a blast. So if I combine that with squirting myself with a spray of water from this can, I think I should stay relatively cool. And of course I have the regular ceiling vent running, blowing out the air. A bit of factor 50, it's rather old but it'll have to do. Slap some of that on and then I will show you what this campsite has to offer. I think the canoes give you a clue as to the secret hot weather weapon of this campsite. And it is just down here. That is the River Wye, which I intend to go and paddle in and possibly set up my chair and sit in with an umbrella as a parasol. Isn't this absolutely glorious? And there were loads of tiny fish too that would later try to nibble my feet, like in one of those spa experiences. A quick tour, there are multiple fields with multiple sites, including whole areas you can book out for your own use. There's an eco toilet and shower block, with showers costing £2.50 for 5 minutes. A cafe is on site with hot and cold food, snacks and drinks, and there are several picnic tables, thankfully with sunshades. I immediately treated myself to a rather expensive £6 but delicious chocolate ice cream sundae. That ice cream was delicious, very chocolatey, very ice creamy and nicely cold, and also quite large, very filling. The plan for the weekend is that there really isn't a plan other... It's not a weekend, is it? The plan for the 2 days is no plan other than survive the heat. So there may not be a great deal to actually show you in this video. This could be the least action-packed video I've ever shot. I'm going to sit here as much in the shade as possible or in the water, read a book, drink my cold drinks, and on occasion probably strip down to my underpants. That, don't worry, I will not film and not show you. That's for premium customers only. So I was toying with the idea, having driven through the little village just before I turned into the campsite. It looks quite pretty. Now, if I can rouse myself very early in the morning before it gets hot, I thought I might go for a walk round and just see what it looks like. So that might be the action sequence for tomorrow morning or Thursday morning. But for the moment, I've got my chair, I've got the shade, I've got cool drinks, I've got a couple of pre-mixed gin and tonics in the fridge as well. So that's me settled, and I will bid you a good afternoon. As I sat, I browsed a book of photographs taken by my canal boating friend Hannah, all about people living afloat on the River Lee in London. It is now 6:15 in the evening. I have just been having a lovely afternoon, sitting here, still reading the book, still ploughing through it, and keeping myself cool by squirting myself with water from this and letting it gently evaporate. And look! I've got my legs out. I'm so sorry, I did promise I wouldn't show you any of that, but it needed to be done. It's very warm. Someone on the campsite, I'm not sure where, is barbecuing, and I keep getting wafts of it. It smells delicious, although it is too hot for hot food, but it smells fantastic. However, with the time at now, 6:15. Oh, and the temperature inside the van now 32 degrees. It's come down by a degree. And outside here in the shade, 29 degrees. It is time for a gin and tonic. I could have obviously bought big bottles and things and mixed it up, but it just made more sense to buy them ready mixed, I think. So gin and tonic time it is. I've been having some dry roasted peanuts as well. Cheers, your good health. Yeah, that's all right, that is. It is now supper time, and despite the delicious smell of barbecue still wafting across the campsite, hot food would be too much, so I have done a salad, which is most unlike me, but I'm really looking forward to it. I have pasta and little sausages and pork pies and carrot and red pepper and mixed leaves and cucumber and tomato and another bottle of the Kopparberg, a tin of the Kopparberg, to drink with it. Misophones, be warned, you're about to hear loud munching sounds. My phone revolted in the heat. It was quite idyllic, apart from the temperature, which at bedtime was still extraordinary. Good morning. It is very early. There is literally a cockerel crowing in a field nearby. The lambs and the birds and the sheep are all in fine voice, and I've just been for a shower. I thought, since the shower cubicles here are very small and the only ventilation in them is just a small grill without a fan, in the heat of the day with a hot shower, they'd just be all steamy once they get going, and trying to get dry inside those would be terrible. So if I go now, very early, and before anyone else has had a chance to heat them up, I might actually be able to dry off in the shower, and that I have managed to do, towel myself down. So I'm clean and refreshed, and the temperature in the van is 25 degrees Celsius and outside is about 24 degrees Celsius. It does feel relatively pleasant, but still muggy, which might just be the after effects of having had the shower, I suppose. I am tempted to go for that quick walk round the village. I say village, tiny little place. Hamlet? Possibly not a hamlet, but anyway, very small place. I'm tempted to go for a walk now. It's quite nice. I mean, it's ludicrously early. I woke at 5:30 and went straight out to the showers. So, yeah, but I might do that. Let's do that. I'll just get myself properly dressed and then go for a walk. The buildings looked quite intriguing, I thought, so I set off back along the path into the campsite. Here's the view along the road one way from the entrance, and here's the other with the pub on the corner. Directly opposite there's a bed and breakfast called the Old Mill, which has evidence of its heritage in the little stream on the side of the road and a millstone in the grounds. You can tell we're not that far from the Welsh border. This is the village sign, which highlights the building we're about to go and see. That building is the Victorian Church, rebuilt from a prior chapel in the 1870s and 1880s. For an English church, it's a very unusual design, apparently an Italian Romanesque style. What I liked the look of was this stone corridor, which would likely stay very cool in the afternoon heat. It's got some very impressive columns and a nice view at the far end. Despite the sign, the door was locked, though at 6:15 in the morning I'm not surprised. I did sit a while here and contemplate the universe. But eventually I wandered on to see what else was about, which included my first ever glimpse of a Citroën Ami electric car. I bet they're fun to drive. Also along here, some pretty cottages with super views over the hills, but that's about it, the speed signs indicating the edge of the village.
I did walk a little further, but there's just hedges and road.
Even this small amount of walking in 23 or so degrees has made the sweat collate and dribble down my back rather horribly. You probably didn't need to know that, but I'm going to go back to the van, take my hay fever tablet and have some breakfast, and then probably continue my sleeping. Have a little morning nap before my afternoon nap.
Thankfully, as I walked back, the sun remained behind clouds, but I could see the van was going to get blasted with some early rays as soon as the cloud moved.
I have, somewhat surprisingly, decided to have a cup of tea. Obviously for that I'm running the inverter to run the kettle. I do need to be a little bit careful with power because having parked under a tree for shade, I am getting effectively zero solar, so the battery is just depleting. But the battery is big enough, it should last me for, well, a couple of days at least, especially if I don't use the kettle much.
I'd spotted this van using portable panels to get around that problem, which is not a bad idea. Back at my van, breakfast was waffles and syrup. Healthy.
Well, you know, to my great surprise, it wasn't a bad night's sleep last night. I really didn't think I'd sleep at all. I think I put the light out at about 11 o'clock, and I lay in the van, obviously no blankets or anything over me, to try and keep cool, and my head was underneath the fan, the vent, where it usually is, but I don't normally have the fan switched on, but I did last night, so it was just blowing the outside air straight onto me, which was certainly cooler than the inside air, and amazingly, I just went to sleep, and then woke up again at 5:30, so okay, it's only about 6.5 hours of sleep, which is less than I normally like, so I am definitely going to nap again today, even if not for the heat. But yes, not a bad night's sleep at all. Whether the same will be repeated tonight, because I think today is supposed to be the really hot day. Possibly today and tomorrow. But anyway, we'll see. So not bad at all.
Had I slept in, I'd have been roused by the man with the strimmer, keeping the site tidy and neat.
Look, we're in luck. It's 9:02 and the sun has gone behind just the start of the tree. This is a good omen for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, the outside temperature sensor is sitting directly in the sun and saying it's 36 degrees out there, 28 in the van. I've left the curtains shut to try to stop any direct sunlight coming into the back of the van. I finished my book yesterday and rather stupidly only brought the one book, and there is also pretty much no internet signal here, so I don't actually know what I'm going to do with myself today, because nothing to read, nothing to watch, don't actually want to go anywhere, it's too hot, certainly don't want to drive the van anywhere, because I don't want to lose my spot under the shady tree for later. So I'm going to have to just stare out the window and nap, I think. It's not all bad.
The only way to get any signal was to perch the phone on the van roof, which isn't terribly convenient. So instead I sat back and played some word and puzzle games on the iPad, which didn't need a signal.
How can I put this delicately? I need to use the facilities, and rather than use the ones in the van, I am going to trek across to the toilet block at the other side of the field. It is presently 27 degrees in the van, which is okay. There's a little bit of a breeze actually, which is quite pleasing, but it's still 32 degrees outside in the shade, and scorchio in the direct sun, so I may come back a melting, miserable mess.
It felt as though I was in the Sahara with that fierce glare from the sky. So en route to the loo, I made use of shelter from the trees.
Well, the walk to the cubicles, not too bad because of the shade from the trees, but the actual toilet block itself is sitting in the direct sunshine, so when you went in, like a little oven in there. Honestly, you wouldn't want to be in there very long at all, for all sorts of reasons. It's now 11:10, van temperature 27, shade temperature 28. I've been idling my time. And I think that is the plan for the rest of the morning. Idle my time away until lunchtime, have a spot of lunch, possibly a short nap. By that point, the sun will have gone behind me, well behind the trees. The day will be baking hot, and at that point I'll go and get A, another ice cream, and then B, get the chair out and the parasol, as I mentioned yesterday, and go and sit over in the river. I think that once the sun is behind me, over, in its westward position, then when I'm sitting down, because there's you have to go down the steps to the river, so I think it should actually be quite shaded over there, and the water will obviously be cool, and that will be the best way to spend the afternoon. So for the moment, just enjoying the peace and quiet, and not doing an awful lot. It's now 12 o'clock midday, and my tum is rumbling from my early start this morning, so I think lunchtime, and that'll be the same as yesterday, salady stuff. And there it is, the remains of the pasta. Got the various salady bits, pork pies, the little sausages under there, leaves, carrot, and amazingly, it's actually sufficiently not boiling in here, 29 degrees, and it doesn't feel like 29, that I have, shock horror, made myself a cup of tea. I am a tad surprised by feeling the need for a cup of tea. Normally when it's warm at all, last thing I want is hot drinks. And I know some people say, oh, tea cools you down. Well, that's nonsense. It absolutely does not. But, I think that temperature gauge is correct. It's showing the expected kind of temperature for the day. And yet here in the van, yeah, it's warm, but it doesn't feel baking. Perhaps it's just because I'm sitting absolutely dead still with a very, very slight breeze outside. But, yeah, not too bad at the moment. For a deadly heat wave, I'm coping.
And by coping, I mean knocked out by the warmth and my early start.
Time now is 3 p.m. It feels like an absolute oven in here, although the thermometer is still saying it's only 31 degrees in the van and 29 outside in the shade. Oh, it feels way hotter. Maybe it's just the clagginess of it, the moistness of the air or something, but it really does feel very hot indeed. And I thought my plan of campaign for this afternoon would be 3 p.m, go for ice cream, 4 p.m, go and sit in the river. So let's go do the ice cream. In order to cope with the heat, while I go out there, I've firstly just soaked my t-shirt in water, but secondly I shall be deploying my secret weapon, the umbrella. I'm a big fan of the umbrella. In rain and shine, today it shall do its turn as a parasol to keep me shady. I have gone for the Biscoff ice cream this time, with the Biscoff biscuits, and the Biscoff smell. And fortunately the table has its own umbrella.
After the ice cream, I decided to take a small plunge.
The time has come for a paddle, and the water at the edge is quite warm. Oh, it's very rocky. I need my flip-flops. I might go back to the van and get my flip-flops. Oh, that is better though. Oh, that is cool. Oh, yes. It's rather nice here. Look at that. Shielded by my umbrella, I now have my chair and my flip-flops. Thongs, as I think the Australians call them. Strange name, flip-flops. So I'm going to go and sit in the river. Well, now this is very pleasant. They do warn you this is a fast-flowing river, and for a shallow river it really is moving some. But look, my feet are in the water. I am sitting in the shade. And we just have the bird song and a few other people splashing about. This is nice. I may look silly, but this is exceedingly pleasant. And I've been sitting here, I think, for about the last hour, just watching the birds swooping for insects, the ducks hiding in the shade on the other side of the river, other people splashing around, keeping themselves cool, and just letting my thoughts wander, not really doing anything, just sitting, watching the water come past, and emptying my brain, which I'm very, very good at. And you know, if this is what passes as blissful, why shouldn't I do it? Because this is lovely. I am back at the van. I've cracked open another Copperberg. This one is pear flavour. It's been in the fridge, so that'll be nice. And so we head towards the evening, with things very gently cooling down a tad. It's a bit toasty as I sit here in the evening sunshine, so I've got the fan plugged in again. The shadows are long. It's 6 o'clock. That can only mean one thing. It's time for another gin and tonic. As it is now 8:25 in the evening, and also as I have not had any cheese sandwiches for the last couple of days, I think supper tonight is a cheese roll. I think I've eaten all my tomatoes, so it will literally just be a cheese roll. Oh, I could put some of that salad in it. Yay! I've got salad. So cheese and salad roll, there's a novelty. There is the finished masterpiece. I went with cucumber rather than salad leaves, because cucumber is less likely to fall out. You know, every time you put salad leaves in, just half of it falls out all over the place and makes a mess, so I think that'll do better. There's a rather splendid sunset, just fading into the distance there, with a jolly good orange. And it is thankfully much cooler now, about 23 degrees Celsius outside the van, so possibly a decent night's sleep again.
Good night.
Good morning. It is another absolute El Scorchio of a day. I think today is supposed to be the last really hot day before the thunderstorms all roll in, either tonight or tomorrow. I'm only booked at the campsite until first thing this morning, so I have just woken up. I'm going to have a little bit of breakfast and then head off. And I think I will shower once I get home. But that's it. It is possible to survive a heatwave in a campervan, provided you A, park under a tree, and B, go and sit in a river. That seems to be my top advice. And always bring your umbrella. It serves a very useful purpose as a parasol sunshade. So thank you very much for watching, and cheerio.